And welcome to Sad Nation's first late night Jammie session. I'm here with Pam Fischer. And let me tell you, Pam is a longtime friend of SAD. Pam is a senior director of external engagement of the Governor's Highway Safety Association and has even spoken to SAD Nation at past national conferences. But what we're going to focus on here today is Pam is also the author of a national report on drowsy driving. So, just to start, Pam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I have to be honest with you. And anytime I get a chance to talk to you and everybody at Sad Nation, it excites me, gets me all jazzed. I just love it. So thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us. And I'm really excited you're here to kick off this topic of drowsy driving. And so I just have a few questions for you.
Sure.
My first one is how much sleep should my peers and I be getting every night? And why is sleep so important anyway?
It is really important. And I'm going to tell you that the magic number that we focus on for teens is 8 hours. 8 hours a night is really, really important. And that's going to change based on your age. So when you're younger, infants and toddlers and children, they need even more sleep. And that's why people think about babies, they sleep all the time. They sleep because they're growing. Well, even as a teenager, you're still growing, your brain is growing. It's really, really important. And I can't overstate that, 8 is optimal, 7 is minimum, okay? But we really say anywhere between about 8 and 10 hours, I think is really what you want to do. And here's the thing I want everybody to understand. Sleep is really life sustaining. And I like to think of it like a three-legged stool. Okay, we need sleep, we need to eat right, and we need to move. And if we don't do one of those things, it's not in balance, if you will, what happens, right? The stool falls over. So it's really important that we say, okay, I know I got to eat right, I'm going to use the right fuel. I know I got to get up, I got to move, I got to exercise and so forth, but I also have to sleep. Sleep is really important.
That's a great analogy. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
But I know myself and a lot of other people are curious that we're just sleeping. So can you help me and Sad Nation understand what exactly is going on as we sleep?
Yeah, we might think that everything is shut down, right? But that is not the case. I mean, our body is doing some really amazing stuff when we go to sleep at night. Our brains are doing things that are going to help us learn and create. And our body is producing hormones that help us grow, develop muscle, fight infection and disease, and even repair cells. So thinking about the pandemic and what we're dealing with right now, the stresses that we're dealing with, all that's happening, sleep is vitally important to help fight off infections, disease. And again, thinking about your brain. So when you skimp on sleep, we're really less sharp and we're less able to react quickly. And I think it's also important for everybody to know that there's also research confirming that a lack of sleep also affects our mental health and it increases the risk for things like high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, and a lot of other health-related conditions. So when we talk about getting your Z's, right, it's really a matter of life and death. It's that important. And I'd even urge that it's so important now during the pandemic. We're dealing with so many stresses. We're dealing with so much pressure in our homes, trying to balance school. I'm sure a lot of folks are dealing with school virtually. I mean, it's really difficult. So the sleep aspect of this is even more important when we're dealing with these kinds of things in our lives.
All very relevant information. Thank you. And so I know I'm guilty of this one. And so I'd like to know, what about catching up on the weekends?
Yeah, we think we can do, and I'm just as guilty as you are, Presley. I've done it too, and I still do it from time to time. I'm an alarm clock setter during the week, but I normally wake up before my alarm clock goes off because my body's in a cycle. And even on the weekends, I do try to sleep a little bit later, but because I'm so, set in my ways, it's a little bit difficult. And that changes as you get older too, believe me. But here's the thing I want everybody to understand is that, wishing that, thinking about sleeping in on Saturdays and Sundays, it's not going to compensate for the sleep that you're not getting during the week. It just doesn't work that way. So once you've lost a couple of hours, you don't get them back. And when you do sleep like 10 to 12 hours on a Saturday, Sunday, and I think about, I have a 25-year-old son. And, I remember when he was in high school and thinking about trying to get him out of bed for, Monday morning, but he would sleep on the weekends. And then I had to fight with him because what happens is it shifts your body clock and it really does make it harder to get out of bed on the next weekday. So you might think you're doing yourself a service, but you're really not. And as I said, you don't get that time back. You just don't. Sleep 6 hours Friday. I'm going to sleep 10, 12 on Saturday. Doesn't work that way. Once it's lost, it's lost.
Yeah, so what can we do to make sure we're getting enough hours of sleep in that magic number range that you talked about?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question because it is really about getting quality sleep, right? We can say we go to bed, but if we can't sleep, we're restless, we're tossing and turning, the room might be too hot, there's distractions and so forth. It does affect it. So it's all about quality sleep. And I really think that starts with your bedroom or your dorm room, okay? And I really want people to think about those places as your sleep zone, period. That's where you sleep. But I have to ask you, are you using your space, your dorm room for, your own purposes other than sleeping? Are you doing that?
Absolutely.
Right. So when you think about a typical dorm room, you've got your laptop in there, right? You've got your cell phone. You may have all your work, your work materials, your schoolwork. You think about, you may have, if you're in a dorm room, you might have a coffee pot. You may eat in your dorm room, right? So there's lots of things happening in that dorm room. That's your space on campus. And I get that. And even at home, in your bedroom, right? You're going to have lots of stuff there that has the potential to take you away from using that room to sleep and now using that room to do lots of anything. So I just let's take the bed, for example. And I'm going to ask you the question. Do you study in bed?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah, right. So it's probably a comfortable spot to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to think about, and everybody else out there in Sad Nation. The only thing you should do in your bed is sleep. Seriously, that's the only thing you should do in your bed. So that means that you've got to find a designated study area either away from your bedroom or your dorm room, and really make that the place where you're going to take care of that business, if you will. Now, I remember growing up, and I had a brother and a sister. We each had our own room. I was fortunate. I had a desk in my bedroom, and that's where I tended to study. So I was, I didn't know all that I know today. But we do need to find places where we can go so we can separate that space. That's really important. And the other thing to think about is if you have a desk in your dorm room or your bedroom and it's right beside your bed, you could be tempted to stay up all night to cram for a test, right? Or to finish a paper. Now I finish and I just slide right into my bed. Well, you've been up, you've been working, your brain is like on hyperdrive, and that really ends up being counterproductive. And the thing we have to remember is that, we just learned this. When we sleep, right, our brains continue to process knowledge. So when you're tired and you stay at your desk and you try to push through, it's going to make you, it's not going to make you any smarter, and it's not going to make you any more productive. All it's going to do is make you more tired in the morning. Bottom line, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a problem. So let me just throw out a couple other things for you to consider here, if you will. So take, for instance, your cell phone and your laptop, right? Mm-hmm. They emit that, and I know mine's here, they emit that blue light, right? The blue light comes off the screen or your laptop. So that exposure to light from that screen can really change your brain's programming for sleep, right? So that's why it's really important that you get off your devices at least an hour before you are ready to go to bed, before it's time to go to bed. And the other thing I would say is, how many of us use this as our alarm clock? You?
Yep.
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah,
so
right?
many of us.
Yeah. And again, I have my son who I know uses this as an alarm clock. So if you take it to bed and it's your alarm clock, or maybe it's sitting right next to your bed, or it's on, if you have a headboard or whatever, and it's there, You could be tempted to check your phone for messages. If it pings or bings or whatever it does, or the screen comes on, it's going to disrupt you. So I would say, if you really do, need to use this as your alarm clock, put it on, the loud so you can hear it, but put it in a drawer away from you. You're still going to hear it, right? Put it out of reach so that you're not, if you hear something, if the light comes back on, you're not automatically reaching for it. And it's not disruptive to you. I think that's really important. I know it's really hard to think about this from the standpoint of what might I be missing, right? You all know about FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So, but we need to make bedtime the time when we truly do bring it down. This is going to be there in the morning. I mean, the beauty is it takes messages, right? It's all there for you in the morning. So it's really important because, this whole infatuation with FOMO is not helping our health. It doesn't help our sleep. So it's really important to think about that kind of stuff. What are we doing to give ourselves quality sleep? I cannot overstate that, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of what you mentioned are factors that I know I for sure haven't considered before. And so thinking about where we study and maybe what we're doing an hour before we go to bed can definitely have an impact. And I encourage all of my peers now to maybe consider that from now on. And
Sure.
Another factor that we should probably touch on is sleep and driving. So what about this for me and my peers? What do we need to know?
Well, I think what's really important first and foremost is that, you're of an age group, new drivers that have a high crash risk. And that's not because you're bad drivers. It's because you're inexperienced. You've not done this before. You're learning kind of essentially on the job, right? Or behind the wheel. And your brain, that important brain that needs lots of sleep to develop, your brain isn't fully developed until really your early to mid 20s, okay? Yeah. So the part of the brain that assesses risk, that knows, what to do is not fully developed. It's just not there. So you have a higher crash risk. So take that piece and then add the potential for not getting enough sleep, potential for drowsy driving, and it really raises that crash risk up even higher. And when I worked on the national report for the Governor's Highway Safety Association on drowsy driving, what I found is that teens and young adults account for more than half of all drowsy driving crashes on our road, right? So it's a really big problem. Now, nobody is immune from this. I mean, I've had situations where I've been behind the wheel and you can tell, I was tired and I feel my head nodding and so forth. But, really, it's a huge problem for teens. Sad Nation, please understand how important sleep is when you get behind the wheel. I mean, I can't overstate that. So more than any other age group, you're likely to be involved in a crash and also a drowsy driving crash. And again, it's not because you're bad drivers. It's because of inexperience and brain development and the need for sleep. I mean, I can't overstate that. It's really important.
Yeah, so now that we're aware kind of this issue, of this factor, are there warning signs we can look out for?
Absolutely. There are absolutely warning signs. And thank you for bringing that up. That's really important. But I'm going to toss it back to you. What do you think is a warning sign? Let's get you thinking about this.
I could imagine, let's see, if I'm behind the wheel specifically, I would imagine yawning would be a first sign.
Okay.
I know sometimes highway hypnosis can come into play, if your eyes are not drifting the proper way and such, and maybe daydreaming or nodding off a little bit, not being able to clearly focus. I feel like all of that might affect you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that frequent yawning and inability to focus, I think, is really important. You really can't, and also just, you can't keep your eyes open, right? You can feel yourself sometimes nodding off, or, you're just so tired, you really can't focus on that. The other thing is, you oftentimes, people who are drowsy end up getting very close to the car in front of them because they're not able to to really judge the gap, and they get closer and closer. So we have issues like that. You have situations where you literally lose track of where you are. And so you think, I'm supposed to get off at exit whatever, and you drive right past the exit, or you miss the road signs because you just can't focus. It's very difficult. Another thing is the inability to stay in your lane, right? You're getting tired, so you're shifting back and forth. And many of the crashes that involve a drowsy driver are single vehicle run off the road crashes because you literally are falling asleep behind the wheel. And one of the interesting things I learned when I was doing the research for this report was we oftentimes have something called micro sleeps, where we're literally driving, our eyes are open, but we're asleep. And it's these split second things. And during that time, thinking about what happens during driving and how you have to be totally on your game and be prepared to react, in that split second, what might you have missed? What's happening? So it's really scary stuff. So those are critical signs. You're yawning, you can't keep your eyes open, you're drifting on the road, you're getting too close to the car in front of you, you can't keep focused on what's going on, you can't kind of remember where you're going and so forth. All of those are signs. And so we really need to be alert and understand that. Vitally important.
Amazing. So what can we do when we're
right.
Tired behind the wheel? I know it's been suggested to me before to maybe drink caffeine or roll down the window. Does any of that help?
Well, yes and no. Okay, so I think let me respond to those two things. Yes, you can roll down the window, and if it's colder, it's cold outside, you get that blast of air that may help revive you a little bit. And caffeine can act as a boost. And I would say that a little tip when we're talking about our dorm rooms or preparing for quality sleep, never consume caffeine a few hours before you're going to bed, because it is a stimulant and stays in your body for about 8 hours. But when it comes to this issue of drowsy driving, yes, you can use caffeine, but it's going to take time to kick in. The bottom line here is the only thing that's going to help you in this case is to get off the road and basically take a nap. I mean, I can't overstate that. Sleep is what your body's craving. Sleep is what you got to give it, plain and simple. So, all those tricks, turn up the radio, right? Pinch yourself. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things that people suggest, right? But the key here is pull off the road to a place of safety. Very important. Don't just pull under the shoulder of the road. We've had many crashes occur where cars run into other cars on the shoulder of the road. So get off to a place of safety, lock your doors, right? And take a nap. And we say 10 to 15 minutes, okay? If you sleep a little bit longer than that, it's probably going to take you a little longer to kind of get alert and be ready to go. So in that case, after you've taken that nap, get out for a minute, stretch your legs, just get yourself ready, and then get back on the road. The other thing to suggest quite simply is if you have a passenger in the vehicle who is also a licensed driver, you could ask them to take over. And I would say if you're a passenger in a car, be on the lookout for warning signs that driver is getting drowsy and fatigued. Because after you drive for a good hour, even 2 hours, it's exhausting. It's hard work because you're on the whole time. So share the driving responsibility with others, particularly if you carpool, back and forth, if you travel back and forth to college with some friends, share the driving if possible. That will really help.
Great. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the takeaway here is that sleep is really important. And in fact, I'd say it's definitely not overrated in any way, shape, or form. And I'd like to know, what do you think, Sad Nation? Leave a comment down below. And Ms. Pam, I'd just like to thank you once again for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Presley. It's been fun chatting with you. And you get an A because, yes, you really listened, you got it. Sleep is vitally important. So please make time in your busy days. I know all of you in Sad Nation are just ramming, charging, going crazy. You've got busy schedules, but you got to take care of yourself for your mental health, for your physical well-being, right? You got to sleep, and for your safety on the road. Can't overstate that. So thanks for having me, Presley. It's great to chat with you. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. I appreciate you joining us tonight and taking time out of your evening. I know we're probably about to head off to bed soon here in a few minutes. So
I'm going to bed. It's my bedtime.
Sad Nation, let's make sure we're all getting our Z's. And remember, at least 8 hours every day. Good night.